Oh, Clay. More like, oh Clay. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap and review for Love is Blind Season 6, the final week, week 4, and we're getting into episode 12. It's weddings time, you guys. We've been building up to this. Who says I do and who says I don't at the altar? We have Jimmy and Chelsea left, AD and Clay, and Amy and Johnny. So who makes it? Who doesn't? Well, I gave you my predictions. I'm ready to probably be wrong, and after watching the episode, yeah, I was wrong. But hey, before we get into all of my thoughts, if it's your first time here at the channel, why don't you hit the big red button below, subscribe for more Love is Blind coverage, because that's right, the reunion is next week and I'm covering it right here on the channel. And yeah, let me know down below in the comments as you're watching this video and tell me what was your most shocking moment, what do you think is going to happen at the reunion after this, because golly, they're going to have to get into a lot. Vanessa, Nick, Lachey, if you're listening or watching, please ask the right questions. So alrighty guys, like we've already been doing all season long, I'm going to give you my spoiler-free thoughts and my spoiler recap. All of the time codes are below. So let's get into my spoiler-free thoughts on episode 12, The Weddings. Yeah, this is an awful episode from a technical standpoint. Listen, I'm here for the dramatics, I'm here for the cheesiness, but if you're looking at this strictly from an editing perspective, there are awful jump cuts. I mean, there are some instances and scenes that just don't make sense in the flow of this episode. And I'm wondering, I'm begging Netflix and everyone involved, please, just can we get a better edited season for season 7? Because season 6 was not it. In the pods, like we talked about in week 1, not bad actually, but everything outside the pods, I'm thinking, man, what happened? I also found it weird that they used certain music choices, like sometimes they would use soundtrack and they sometimes would use the score, and it just felt like there were moments that needed to be played down and moments that needed to be played up, and it never got there with the music. Oh, and don't get me started on some out of focus subjects in frame. When you're having a testimonial interview and I'm seeing the table more clearly than I'm seeing the subject who's speaking, how did that happen? So it really was just a mess, and arguably the messiest wedding episode in Love is Blind history, again, from a technical standpoint. And I mean, there were some things that were messy in this episode, which we'll get into in my spoiler section, but I'll save it for that. And next, guys, this episode had poor pacing. Please let me know in the comments if I'm alone on this or not, but I was very bored with this episode up until AD and Clay's ceremony. There was a segment, then there was the bachelor party, and then the bridal shower, and everything up until the literal ceremony for AD and Clay just never held my attention. Of course, I was fully invested taking notes, but it didn't really work for me, and it felt like, I don't know, there was a lot of oomph missing from this episode. Now, I will give it to this finale. There were some surprises and some things that really did make me raise my eyebrows, laugh, and also think, what in the world are you saying? And if there was another positive, it comes in the form of two individuals, Amy's dad and Clay's mom. Man, they're gems. They're so good in this episode. But y'all, I gotta imagine you're gonna wonder, okay, was there at least a pleasant ceremony? There was, but we're gonna get into the ceremonies now and a full recap of this episode, because we don't necessarily get started with wedding planning. So yeah, spoiler warning, because it's time to get into my full thoughts on this episode, and we're gonna begin with Jimmy and Chelsea's conversation continued from last week. Remember, they are at this second-rate Disney World and they're talking all about the decision at the altar. Last week we left off on a cliffhanger where Jimmy asked Chelsea, what's your decision going to be at the altar? Fade to black. Now we get back to that conversation, and color me surprised. Remember, Jimmy's been saying, I have no doubt you're my person, and Chelsea's shocked and making a woe face. However, when Jimmy asks Chelsea, hey, do you think we'll get married? What's your answer at the altar going to be? She actually says, I can see us getting married right now. Chelsea mentions that there's been a roller coaster of emotions and they're at a theme park, so that was kind of hilarious. I see what you did there, Chelsea. And she reaffirms, yeah, right now I can see us getting married. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Jimmy's been saying, yes, she's 100% my person, and last week was telling all the guys, yeah, I love her so much. But Jimmy didn't really mean that, I guess. Jimmy starts talking blah, 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 and then says, and I quote, "I don't want to go to the altar." What? How do you go one day saying this is your person? Actually, how do you go one moment and then following up that moment minutes later saying, actually, I don't want to go to the altar with you? And let me tell you, Jimmy, he definitely stood on business a bit because, yeah, it's not that he just didn't want to go to the altar. I think he's done. He's cutting her off. He didn't go cold turkey like Kenneth and say, like, peace out, I'm going to go with my homies. No. Jimmy read her like a book. Granted, he was building up this whole conversation as if he was going to be the one to say, yeah, I'll go to the altar with you. But Jimmy's like, I got a list of reasons, pulls out his book and says, I just really don't like a lot of the things you said. One of them in particular was Chelsea saying Amy and Johnny are the strongest couple on multiple occasions, according to Jimmy. So Chelsea, of course, kind of sticking her foot in her mouth with that one because, yeah, you don't really say that. And Jimmy was sensitive at the couples meetup, so why would you bring it up again? And Chelsea was now going from shocked and sad to, I'm going to be on the offensive. Chelsea said, and I quote, "Why did you even propose to me? You didn't even try to get married." Now, listen, Jimmy low-key did wait a long time to tell her no, because, again, he sounded like he made up his mind a while back that he would marry her. Instead, it was the opposite. He was telling us that, but he wasn't feeling that. Just weird timing after their wedding planning and all that talk about him loving her and you're my person, so very interesting. But Jimmy says, listen, it's not even just that. You hurt my feelings on multiple occasions. You have been hurting my feelings ever since that argument we had and you told the world in America that I slept with my friend. I don't want people knowing that I sleep with my good friends that are girls, and homie, what's done in the dark comes to light, just saying. Chelsea, of course, disagrees with him and saying, listen, you're making excuses, but Jimmy then brings up the fact that Chelsea shouldn't be pressing him so much because, hey, Chelsea, you FaceTimed your ex when they got their phones back. Listen, Jimmy came with receipts. Like, you thought CVS gave long receipts. Jimmy had a longer one because I cannot believe all of this tea that is spilling over right now. But yeah, Chelsea, man, she apparently FaceTimed her ex-husband. Well then. So Chelsea's like, I'm gonna get the last word, and she says, and I quote, "You throw in the towel with one issue?" Well now, Chelsea, one issue is quite an understatement. Yeah, there have been multiple issues. I mean, listen, have you been watching the channel? Have you been looking in the comments? We're all seeing it as it unfolds. Surprised you didn't, first person. But yeah, Jimmy said, listen, and this is a quote from Jimmy. He says, "Continue to remind me why I'm making the right decision here." Yo, Jimmy is a savage. Oh my goodness. When he said that, that was it. Jimmy's like, listen, it's done. The bridge is burned, and Chelsea just goes off on her own. She leaves the dinner, and there's this very awkward but funny wide panning shot of her crying alone on one of the fences to the amusement ride. Wow. Yeah, things escalated quickly with this segment. So after all that drama, this is where the episode begins to get boring to me. They transition us to both the bridal shower and the bachelor party, but let's begin with the bridal shower. It's one day until weddings, and only AD and Amy are left at this point, and it's very awkward because nobody in either the bridal shower or the bachelor party mentions Jimmy and Chelsea. Maybe they were just over them. AD and Amy are having a great time with their girls, and AD's got the cowgirl hat on, but this ain't Texas. That's for sure. Now, when it comes to the music in this segment, it wasn't hitting. I'm going to tell you guys straight up, whoever decided to use that song for the moments that happened at the bridal shower, why? I don't know. It didn't work for me. And then AD and Amy have a conversation at the bar, and of course AD is asking Amy the question, did you and Johnny ever get intimate during the experiment up to this point? Well, Amy says no, and AD doesn't believe her clearly because in AD's testimonial interview, she says, and I quote, she doing things to that man. But doing things, replace that with the word that starts with the letter F, and it doesn't stand for forgive. Amy does reveal, though, in this segment that she believes Johnny will 100% say yes, and then Amy says, I feel 98% like I'll say yes. So I'm like, what are y'all doing, producers? What are we doing here? Don't ruin a good thing, right? Don't do that. But now let's talk about my notes I have for the bachelor party. Well, it felt tiny compared to the bridal shower that had more people, which makes sense because you want your bridesmaids there, and I thought they don't have groomsmen? okay. Might have been the smallest bachelor party in Love is Blind history, but the guys are talking, they're all, yakking it up, and Clay is, honestly, I've learned, the type to kiss and tell, because he is telling all of his friends that, hey, AD and I, our intimacy is good. Why? Why do we need to know that? Why does America need to know that, let alone your friends? I'm sure AD didn't appreciate that. And then Clay reaffirms his position with AD and says, I'll go to war with AD. But I wonder which war he's talking about. Trust me, what I just said will make sense in a little bit. So, alrighty, we got through the boring segments, and we're going to get into AD and Clay's wedding day. Guys, let me tell y'all, this segment threw me for a loop. AD and Clay pull up to Cedar Creek Ranch, but AD pulls up in a Rolls Royce herself. The budget was probably good for this season, huh? And then when they eventually do the pod montage all the way, following the relationship up to this moment, they give the highs and the lows, and of course they had to add in a Clay soundbite where he is insecure about himself and whether he can be good for AD because his father cheated on his mom. I mean, if I had $1 for every time we heard Clay talk about this, we would be rich. So eventually we get to AD's room, and AD reveals she's the first of 7 siblings to get married. That number is about to be skewed. But AD's mom shows up, Jacqueline, I believe her name is, and she is so genuine in this moment. And we knew that, right? We talked about it last week. AD's mom is a very genuine person, it seems, and she loves her daughter. And I love that for her and for them. And AD's mom and Clay's mom apparently met off camera. A lot of moms meet moms, and that's kind of nice because your possible mother-in-law meeting your actual mom and they got along, it sounds like. Very cool moment. And then we go to Clay's room where, honestly, we get introduced to more of the groomsmen. Where were all of these people, y'all, at the bachelor party? And it was at this point where these moments were so boring. I didn't have enough Cheez-Its to eat during this segment to really mask and take away the boringness, if that's even a word, of this part of the segment. But Clay's dad eventually shows up, and I raised my eyebrows, but not for the reason you think. I didn't even think his dad would show up, especially considering Clay's sharing all of the secrets of, his dad taking him on these cheating excursions. But they're really beating around the bush here because, guys, I just know Clay wanted to bring up the fact that his father was cheating on his mom. And did it happen? No, there was some subtext there, but not really directly. Instead, Clay's dad reveals, hey, I had daddy issues growing up. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense. And then Clay's dad, whose name I think is Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, guys, he gives Clay some sort of word soup type of encouragement. And we're going to read his little motivational speech word for word right now, you guys, so you can experience what I experienced, because if I had to listen and watch this, so do you. And I quote, this is Trevor, Clay's dad. You think you're beaten? You are. You think you dare not? You don't. If you'd like to win, but think you can't, it's almost a cinch you won't, right? But it continues. If you think you'll lose, you've lost in the world. You find success begins with a fearless will. And I just know this whole time Clay is fed up. The man looks like he's heard this so many times. Clay's dad's like that kind of dad growing up with his son or his daughter in sports and says every couple seconds, like, you can be better than this. You got this. But substitute that basic encouragement with that speech every single time. I'd be sick of it too, Clay. So after that hilarious moment, it's time for AD and Clay's ceremony. It's outdoors, just like the rest of the ceremonies today, and I just know it's hot out there. Some of these edits are weird, and it kind of goes back to my thoughts with the spoiler-free section of this video, where for some reason we're seeing guests turn their heads around and snap back to look at the gates, and no one's walking through, and it's weird. Like what happened? Did someone hear a noise? Did somebody, I don't know, fall? I want to see that, but why are we seeing guests turn their heads around and look very confused? It was odd, but I digress. While Clay is walking down the aisle with his mom, it's weird and awkward because there's dramatic music. It's like somebody just watched Dune Part 2 and thought, let's place it into this ceremony. Like, what in the world, guys? Why? And then AD walks down the aisle alone because I guess, again, she doesn't want her father to be there and maybe doesn't want a fatherly figure to be there. She just wanted to do this solo. And all right, I guess that's fine. Yeah. And throughout this ceremony, guys, I did notice that Clay's doing this thing with his head where he's just like jutting forward. Every time he's like, I look good? I look good, y'all? Like, what are we doing? Our best turtle impression? Why? Now, I won't front. We've had some bad Love is Blind officiants in the past, but the officiants this episode were amazing, starting with this gentleman who did a good job, and I low-key thought he was going to give us a sermon. Seriously. I was like, all right, Pastor, take us to church. I'm ready. It didn't really happen, of course, but now we're getting into the vows, and AD says, I'll always be your biggest fan, Clay, your biggest cheerleader always. I think she was a cheerleader though, right? So the puns this episode, they keep coming. And then Clay, right after that, his response had me calculating. Roll the tape.
Proud of you. I'll always be your biggest fan, your biggest cheerleader, always.
Wow.
And then Clay continues to try and crack jokes whenever the officiant says anything about looks, age, finances, they don't matter. And then, you know, you hear Clay say, oh, I didn't say all that. Bro, we get it. We get it. If AD was not your type, you probably would have dumped her by now, right? So it goes back to everything you all have said in the comments. Clay is so enamored with AD's looks, and he's not willing to look past it. And y'all just know that Clay asked the officiant to use Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 through 6. And y'all know I love that bit of scripture. Honestly, it's incredible. It's something I live by. And, you know, hearing it a lot is great. Again, though, faith without works is dead, right? So that's maybe, we'll talk about this soon, but Clay definitely has got to work in that area, I think. So eventually we're getting to the decision, guys. And AD says, my heart is racing. And then there's this heartbeat sound effect. What is this mess? They try to get so cutesy with the editing and then the sound design and the music here. And no, the drama speaks for itself, evidently, because once Amber's asked, of course, what does she say? I do. I did not think that would happen. So I'm like, oh, all right, Clay's reservations are gone. Clay knows. I'm in this. I'm ready to say I do. So the officiant asks Clay, do you take AD sight unseen or whatever he says? And then Clay says, no, it's not responsible for me to say I do. And I just knew he was going to say no when he started. Instead of saying I do, he said, AD, you know, I love you a lot. Oh, when you hear that, y'all, especially in Love is Blind history, it's not great. Clay does mention he's going to be rocking with her and that he himself needs a lot of work, but he's willing to put the work in for AD. However, do we all forget a very important detail from last week? AD said, if you tell me no at the altar, we're done. And I know she means it. There's an awkward silence that then comes over the crowd, and it is so awkward, guys. And Clay is trying to have this conversation with AD at the altar when, she wants to leave. But Clay says to her, why does it matter with the timing? This man's delusional. Are you kidding? Of course it matters with the timing. You just embarrassed her in front of all of her family and friends. Bro, you knew you were going to say no. I don't care if he comes up with this excuse, game time decision. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But come on, dude. Really? So now once Clay and AD exit the ceremony, well, AD's very confused. And she calls, and I say in her words, Clay an idiot. So AD's getting from sad to upset, and I don't blame her, but Clay's mom eventually has a conversation with Clay and says, listen, you have to know if you want to marry somebody 100%, so it felt kind of like she's reassuring him you made the right decision, but I feel like there's something that must have happened that we didn't see where she also kind of grilled him a bit. And then we go back to AD, and AD's bridal party is cursing up a storm in front of these kids. Someone off camera, I think it might have been AD's mom, tells AD, hey, we still love him for you, because AD is like, I don't know what to do. I still love him. And I think it was AD's mom that says, well, we love him for you. But then one of AD's bridesmaids said, nope. Excuse me. He is a mess and he messed up. But she didn't say mess. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of confusion on AD's side, but then we transition back to Clay, and Clay's with his dad and Clay's with his mom at the same time. Clay's dad is trying to give him another pep talk, y'all, and I'm not making this up. Just stop it. Stop it. Please. but it was funny. And then Clay says in his testimonial interview that finances for him are a huge thing, and he just didn't understand AD's finances. So now we're starting to uncover and peel back this onion of why Clay said no at the altar. He then adds he wasn't deeply in love with AD, and whew, this reunion is about to be crazy. So not only did he not understand her finances, he said he wasn't deeply in love with her, which contradicts every scene we're about to witness. So AD and Clay have their one-on-one conversation, and Clay mentions to AD this was a game time decision. If you don't stop it, Clay, if you don't stop it with these references to sports. And then Clay mentions that he didn't say no to AD, he was saying no to himself, that he couldn't look at himself in the mirror and see himself as a husband. Oh boy, the amount of trauma that this man still lives with is insane. And then Clay looks at AD and says, "Can I get a hug?" This is very much giving "where's my hug at" type of energy. Oh, but Clay doesn't stop there with the awkward moments. Clay says, "You think I'm leaving? You're gonna have to run away from me." That's what he tells AD as AD's literally sitting there heartbroken, and he tries to kiss AD and she clearly doesn't want to kiss him, and it is so awkward and on the verge of being a little creepy. And then Clay makes this about himself again, saying, "I learned a lot about me," and my gosh, I'm rolling my eyes. Why, man? This is not about you right now. This is about either both of you, and if it's not, then don't comment on yourself. And AD, I'm proud of her. She finally says, "Clay, you gotta leave me. Bye-bye." And I'm not mad at that. AD's setting the boundary, and she's like, "I'm done." And Clay turns around all dramatic. "I don't want to go. Please, man. Why?" He must be thinking this is ripe content for TikTok. I can't wait to duet myself and, well, talk to you about why I made this decision. I could see it. And then eventually Clay's mom and dad have their own one-on-one conversation, and Clay's mom says, "Hey, you need to apologize to Clay to provide closure for him to get to those next steps in his life." And Clay's dad starts to cry and says, "I didn't have a fatherly role model growing up." But at this point, you know, Clay's mom was like, "No more excuses. Stop it." And then Clay's mom reveals she didn't know about the things that he did with Clay, taking him on these cheating excursions until this experiment. Oh, she's been saving this one in her arsenal for a while, all right? She's had this one in her bag ready to go, and she let us know, and wow, that is crazy. But honestly, Rita, Clay's mom, is a wise woman. We stand with Rita. Alrighty guys, so now it's time to go to the last wedding ceremony of the day, and that is Amy and Johnny. This is really sweet. I don't have many petty notes. I just have good notes for this because it's true. This was a sweet segment, guys. So one of Johnny's sisters is joining Amy's bridesmaids. I thought that was really cool. Very nice moment. Leave it up to Amy to be very thoughtful here. And then they go back to, you know, Johnny's room and stuff, and they keep showing us this darn cigar bar. Did anyone even use the cigar bar? Maybe Johnny's asthmatic, did the producers ask? And then we see the rest of Johnny's groomsmen come in, plus Johnny's other sister. Is it kind of odd, guys, that she was there with everybody? It is interesting, right? I'm not the only one that thinks that. Okay, moving on. So eventually, we see Amy's mom and dad show up, and man, this moment touched me, and I almost teared up, y'all. It was so sweet that I didn't even notice the weird edits and awful jump cuts in this moment. And Amy's dad eventually lighting up when he sees his daughter in her wedding dress is also an equally sweet and tender moment. So, of course, right, the ceremony is gonna go great. Let's talk about it. So, the ceremony itself begins, and the camera shows us everyone in attendance and seats that were reserved for Amy's grandparents who passed away. So that was a really nice touch. And then eventually they go to the officiant, and the producers knew what they were doing by giving him a lower thirds, because I just know there are probably people in the comments that are like, "Yo, that officiant, he's a handsome man." But y'all, he's engaged to Johnny's sister, so yeah. And then we get back to Amy ready to walk in, and on her arms are her father and her brother, and this is so darn emotional. Seriously, I almost cried like 5 separate times during the scene. It was really good. And then Johnny and Amy get to the altar, the officiant's there going through everything, and then Amy gives her vows to Johnny. It was nice. And Johnny's only response back, at least that we saw on camera, was this: "I can't wait." And that's it. It's interesting. So the officiant turns to Amy and asks her first, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? And she says, I do. That's not a surprise, right? Well, let's go to Johnny. And Johnny is asked second, do you take Amy to be your wife through sickness and health, richer for poorer, and all that nice jargon? And then Johnny says, with the dramatic music, which is so distracting, I do. Alrighty guys, we finally have a couple who made it all the way to the altar and said I do. I was losing hope. I was. And just like that, they become the only married couple this season. And as they're walking back, I thought it was a nice touch that they apparently had an artist painting them in real time walking down the aisle together. This is so nice. Honestly, Netflix, your budget went up, didn't it? It must have. And then, of course, we can never end on a sweet note. We gotta go to Clay and AD. Clay is beating himself up and saying he feels stupid, sulking, hanging his head low, and we're almost wondering, bro, didn't you do this to yourself? And AD is locked in on the fact that she is not going to be with Clay anymore and give him another chance. AD says, and I quote, I don't see myself continuing to date him. If we get to the reunion and they're somehow still talking, I'm gonna say, AD, why? You were standing on business and now you're just standing on quicksand. What are you doing to yourself? So apparently the producers heard me as I was watching this episode, because we do get one short reception scene with Amy and Johnny, and it does end on a nice note. I just wish we focused on the receptions more in Love is Blind. Every single season, we get the reception for the couple who's made it all the way and says I do, and it's so short. But like for Amy and Johnny, dude, Jimmy and Chelsea, they're riding theme park rides alone. You have AD and Clay, they've gone their separate ways, and we only have one wed couple. So like, why can't we spend more time with the receptions? So everyone's having a real good time, and the floral arrangement for where Amy and Johnny are sitting is absolutely gorgeous, y'all. And yep, that's it. There you have it, y'all. The end of season 6 for Love is Blind. Episode 12, the weddings, they came and they went. For some, they said I do, and for others, they said bye-bye. But guys, I honestly have to say, this season was entertaining, okay? Was it perfect? No. Was it great? I don't think so. Is it one of the better Love is Blind seasons? Yes, maybe more like middle of the pack. But overall, it is better than the weakest Love is Blind seasons that we have unfortunately grown accustomed to lately, but I did enjoy this season for all intents and purposes. Now, my sights are focused on next Wednesday, right, for the reunion. Like I mentioned, I'm doing a recap and review right here, so please hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel, because we're diving into spoilers, all my commentary, and who knows? Maybe Jessica and Jimmy did sneaky link together. I don't know. We'll have to see. But guys, this was fun. Walking through season 6 with you and just hearing your commentary and conversing with each and every one of you has been great. So let me know more down below in the comments what you thought about season 6 overall, and where does it rank for you in terms of all the seasons that we've gotten in Love is Blind US's history. Alrighty, y'all. Well, I need to go rest my voice, because if the reunion is as dramatic as I think it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of me getting into it, you know what I mean? Oh gosh, I can't wait. Alright, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Somebody check on Chelsea though. Is she still at the theme park?